I'm still sometimes surprised when following Jesus doesn't just lead us to like green pastures and still waters, but seems to lead straight into the darkest of valleys. I shouldn't be. I know better. I know that following Jesus means following Jesus to the cross, and then through the cross to resurrection, to the life that is truly life. That's what it means. That's what the scriptures teach. That's what Jesus modeled. That's the lived experience of Christians down through the ages. And yet, it still catches me by surprise sometimes. A couple weeks ago, went to a conference with an old friend of mine down in Dallas, Texas. It was so good to see him. We had kept up over the years, but this was the first time we'd like hung out, like face to face, in person, in like 17 years. So we stayed up late in the hotel, talking late into the night, catching up, sharing stories, and I was reminded of what he had been through all these years. So when we were still in seminary, they lost their third child, a newborn. And then still reeling from that loss, they picked up their family and moved to China. That was their calling. They were going to go train pastors in China. And the ministry was amazing. They were in China doing this amazing ministry. Life was going really well. Everything was going well, except it wasn't going so well for their oldest daughter. She was really, really struggling with mental health issues. And so they tried to help her out. They tried to figure this out, but they found they were just completely powerless to help her. And so after several years of struggling with that, they decided it was too much for her. So for the sake of her, they needed to move the family back to the United States. So after years of learning Chinese, getting embedded into that culture, they had to walk away from that. So then they come home, and he immediately gets picked up. He's super gifted, smart guy, hired to help start a seminary at a mega church. He was going to train pastors in the United States. He was friends with the lead pastor there. And again, the ministry was just amazing. Hundreds of guys getting trained. It was just amazing ministry. Everything was good, but something was off again. He started to notice that his friend, the lead pastor, something was off. In fact, it came out that his friend was becoming more and more spiritually and emotionally abusive in his leadership. And so he had to, along with a team of guys, fire his good friend, the lead pastor. It devastated the church, ended the ministry. And then a couple of years later, his friend took his own life. His oldest daughter never really got well. When she turned 18, still battling the same old mental health issues, she disowned the family, left and never came back. And then all of this chronic stress was building up in their younger daughter, who herself was actually really bright and happy and a really gifted student, had won a scholarship to go to college, but the chronic stress led to an eating disorder that led to social anxiety, and she just recently flunked all of her classes, not because she wasn't bright enough, but because she couldn't bring herself to get out of the car and go into the classroom. On and on, just like wave after wave, all your breakers wash over me. So I'm sitting there on the edge of my bed in our hotel listening to these stories, just feeling like this weight of pain and suffering and hardship that he's been through. Like he spent his whole life trying to follow Jesus, extremely gifted, extremely bright, trying to help all these people, trying to do ministry, and it's led into hardship upon hardship, sorrow upon sorrow. But my friend, that wasn't his perspective. So he had just recently transitioned out of teaching ministry into counseling, got a degree in counseling, and as he reflected on his life, He told me he felt like this is exactly what he needed. Like it was necessary for him to go through all of this in order to be able to sit with those who've been through such suffering, to be fully present with them. To which I replied, only half joking, like I can totally see it. But if that's what it takes to get that kind of depth, I pray, Lord, keep me shallow. Shallowness for life, please. Only half joking. But my friend, he's right. His suffering, his sorrow has deeply formed him. Through all of this, he has become safe, gentle, kind, non-judgmental, non-anxious. Like Jesus. So today we are coming back to Psalm 23, and we are going to come to the very center of this psalm, both literally and spiritually. This is the turning point, the hinge, the deep middle of this journey of following the Good Shepherd. And what do we find on the other side of green pastures and still waters? Where does following the Good Shepherd lead us? Well, it leads us straight into the valley of the shadow of death. That's where it leads us. So we are continuing our exploration through the three great confessions of Psalm 23. I shall not want. I will fear no evil. And I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And today we're in that middle portion, I will fear no evil. And our text for today is Psalm 23, verse 4. One verse. In fact, thinking about it this week, I believe this is the first time ever that I've only preached one verse in a sermon, and it might seem excessive or ridiculous, but if you've ever passed through the valley of the shadow of death, you know that it's not. That this one verse isn't just about the words on this page. It carries with it all of our hurts and sorrows and losses and courage and faith and comfort. This one verse has so much in it that we could only begin to unpack it. We can't hope to unpack it, well, for the rest of our lives, really. So here's a question. As we step into this verse today, I want to ask, how do we not lose faith? Not lose our way, not lose our souls when following the Good Shepherd leads us into the valley of the shadow of death. How can we, like David, confess, I will fear no evil, when in fact evil's all around us? And it's terrifying. So if you want a map for where we're headed today, we're going to ask where, who, and what. Where am I? Who is with me? And what is he holding? Where am I? Who's with me? What is he holding? So last week, we just covered the first three verses. Let me give you some context here. It starts like this. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. This is where we left off last week. It's stunning, it's beautiful, it's reassuring. But then, following the same shepherd leads us to a place that we rather not go, a place that we would never choose for ourselves. The very next verse is, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. That following the Good Shepherd leads David straight into the valley of the shadow of death. So let's try and wrap our imaginations around seeing what David is seeing here. Some scholars think that he's referring to a literal valley. There's a place called the Wadi Qelt. Here's a picture of it. Here's another one that gives you a sense of it. It is narrow and rocky, gorge-like near Jericho there. And to this day, Bedouin shepherds, they lead their flock through this to go up to green pastures. So you can see just from the picture here that it is a veritable kill zone. This is a terrifying place for a sheep to be because there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and there's lots of places for predators to hide. But it's also not just dangerous for sheep, it's actually dangerous for people. So as recently, the 1940s, there were 50-some French tourists in there, and a flash flood hit, killed them all. They all drowned. But, so it could be, this could be part of the imagination of what David wants us to see here, but knowing what we know of David's life, we might suspect that he's describing something more than a physical valley here. The Hebrew text literally reads, the valley of deep darkness. So David lived through war, a broken marriage, betrayal of close friends, death of several children, rape of his daughter, he committed murder, and one of his sons tried to kill him. Like, if you know his story and you read through the Psalms and through the Old Testament history books, you will find that the pages of our Bible are streaked with his tears. This is a man who knows suffering and death and grief. Like, he's been through a darkness that's so much deeper than anything you're going to find in the Wadi, Qelt. So this likely isn't just about leading sheep through a dangerous valley. This is about passing through deep darkness, through doubt, suffering, grief, depression, anxiety. It's being in the place where you know there's so much wrong and there's nothing you can do about it. It's feeling lost. As a parent, it's seeing your kids suffer and not being able to do anything about it. It's the terror of seeing evil around you and in you, and feeling hopeless to fix it. So David, he knew that deep darkness, and most of us do. And in the scriptures, you're going to find this vision of deep darkness, this language of darkness, utter darkness, deep darkness. It has like these layers of meaning. To enter into darkness is it's to be blind to reality. So it's Elijah's servant who was terrified because he saw that they were surrounded by these enemy armies because he could not see the armies of the living God were there too. It's Nicodemus who comes to Jesus at night. He's this famous leader who's brilliant. He's a scholar of the Bible. He knows all the right answers about God. He knows the scriptures, and yet he cannot see God when he's standing right in front of his face. Darkness is to enter into darkness is to be vulnerable to attack. Like, they can see you, but you can't see them. It's to be confused. It's to be lost. It's to be blinded by doubt, pain, suffering, fear. It's darkness that is not just out there, but it can actually get inside of you. So in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, if the light within you is darkness, how great is the darkness that it can get inside of you. And this metaphor of darkness, it helps us better understand then ourselves and our experiences in life. So I want you to consider like the greatest attribute, the thing that marks darkness for what it is, both physically and spiritually, is the absence of something. It's a void. It's something's missing. So I recently listened to an interview with astronaut Dave Wolf. Fascinating. He tells the story about his very first spacewalk, 1990s. He went out to work on the Mir space station, and at that height above the Earth in orbit, he was traveling 18,000 miles an hour around the Earth, which means you pass a night and day. You go around the Earth 16 times for every one Earth day. So every 90 minutes, night, day, night, day. And he said the difference between night and day when you're up there is staggering. So there's no atmosphere to limit it in any way. So the light of the sun blasts you with heat and brightness, unlike you've ever felt. And then sometimes seconds later, you'll be in this utter darkness and frigid cold. Like the temperature difference will drop as much as 400 to 500 degrees in seconds. And he said when he was out there working on the space station over one of those times when it was his 45-minute nights, he said they were over the ocean. And so there was no light coming up from the planet Earth. And right as he entered into that darkness, he looked down and he said it was completely disoriented. It was like the Earth utterly disappeared. Utter darkness. You could not see the Earth, he said. All it looked like was a space where there were no stars. Utter void. It was so dark, he said, as he was working on the space station, he had a light on his helmet, but if his arm went into the shadow, it was like he was gone. Vanished. Nothing, not like you would see it in the shadow. You would see nothing. It was gone. And that's what darkness does. It consumes, it conceals. So over the past couple decades, I don't know if you've followed this at all, but the scientists have created new types of black paint. Have you seen this? They have Vantablack and Black 3.0. And what's curious about this is it doesn't just absorb light the way like most black colors do, but it has this microscopic structure where the light gets in and gets trapped, bounces within it, and more gets absorbed, so almost no light bounces back off of it. And the effect is this bizarre ultra-black effect. So here's two bronze busts, identical busts, one painted with the Vantablack and one not. It just vanishes. It's a void. It's like there's nothing. Like you look at it from the side and you can kind of see, oh, there is something there. Now this is what darkness does. It consumes, it conceals, it creates a void, it takes away. And this is how theologians down through the ages have described evil. Most famously, St. Augustine points out that evil is not a thing, like there's no reality or substance to it. There's no thing you can pick up and be like, that is evil. That everything God created is good, yeah, because God is goodness itself. He's the source of all goodness, and then he creates good things and declares over them, they are good. So if you want to use the philosophic term, you nerds out there, there's no ontological substance to evil. Everything that is good, which is to say, evil is not a thing that God has created. It's a perversion or a privation of a good thing. Take, for example, sex. The mutual, loving act of giving yourself to another person to whom you are committed fully in the covenant of marriage. Well, that's good. God created that. That's beautiful. But if you take away commitment, if you take away love, if you take away mutual self-giving, what are you left with? You are left with an animalistic act that turns other people into objects to satisfy your desires. And that is selfish, and that is dehumanizing. That is to profane that which is holy, that which is most honorable, that which is most human. And humans are created to be good, very good. And when you do that, well, that's not good. That's darkness. That's evil. So when you take away from what God has given us, you pull it into the darkness and it becomes something less. It becomes something evil. So in this way, sin makes us less. It pulls us away from what is true and real and substance, that deep, rich, thick fullness of life that we're created for, and it dehumanizes us. It profanes us. God's good creation becomes less than. And ultimately, if you pull it all the way into the darkness, you are cast into utter darkness, which is what Jesus says is hell. Now, this is not to deny the very real experience. There's almost a presence to darkness, which is really odd when you think that it's an absence, but it has this weight to it. So when God sends the plague of darkness over Egypt, read how he describes it to Moses. He says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Stretch out your hand towards the sky so that the darkness spreads over Egypt, darkness that can be felt.'" Now, if darkness isn't a thing, but the absence of a thing, how could you feel it? And yet you know exactly what this means, don't you? You felt it, haven't you? I felt it. David certainly felt it. And there, in the midst of the valley of the shadow of death, in the deep darkness, David then, in the middle of this darkness, this depth of darkness, unlike most of us hopefully have never known, but all of us have known in part. He says this great confession, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death," literally the deep darkness, "I will fear no evil." Now, I want you to pay attention to this. This is not a denial of evil. It's not closing your eyes and pretending like everything's fine. It's a confession. It's a defiant cry of faith that evil, even if I'm in the midst of it, it does not have say over me. It does not control me. It doesn't determine where I end up. He does. It's not born from some naive optimism. It's born out of something greater, not the absence of evil, but the presence of the Good Shepherd. Why can he say, I will fear no evil? For you are with me. And this is the very center of the psalm, spiritually and literally, poetically. So if you take the Hebrew passage and you look, you will find that all the verses in right here, this is the very precise middle of Psalm 23, that this is the unmoving center. To borrow a line from T.S. Eliot, this is the still point of a turning world. Like everything else hinges around this. Like if you want to understand who the Good Shepherd is, if you want to experience him in your life, you must know this one thing, for you are with me. And notice the shift in language here. When he's in green pastures and still waters, how does he talk? Well, he talks about God. Yeah, he leads me. He guides me. He restores me. He does these things for me. He knows about God. But when he's in the darkest depths of the valley, he didn't talk about God. He talks to God. It moves from theology to prayer. You are with me. I need to talk to you, not about you. I need to hear your voice. I need to feel your presence. I need you here with me right now. And what calms David's fears is not the change in surroundings. He's not getting out of the valley. He's still in the valley, but his focus shifts from where he is to who is with him. And this taps into one of the deepest themes through all of Scripture. In fact, Bible scholars will often say that the great promise of Scriptures is not, to our surprise, is not, I will save you. It's I will be with you. So the shift might sound small, that they're similar but not identical. And I will save you versus I will be with you. The nuance here is important. So my favorite example of this comes from Exodus chapter 3. Moses shows up to the burning bush, and God says, hey, I want you to go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. And Moses says, I don't think so. Right? I've got these sheep to take care of. I'm really busy right now. And what's God's reply to him? I will be with you. But he's like, I'm terrible at public speaking. I can't do this. And he does, in fact, let his brother Aaron come with him. But then he repeats, I will be with you. But God, how is this going to work out? And he says, I will be with you. In fact, 5 times in that chapter. At least in the Hebrew. His answer is not, I'm going to save you. It's not, I'm going to do it for you. It's, I will be with you. And then there, in the midst of this fear, in the midst of this terrible calling on his life, where he has to go now stand in front of the most powerful man in the world, the God of the age. Remember, Pharaoh was considered a god. He has to stand before the God of this world. And what does God say to him? I want you to know my name, Yahweh. So in our normal translations, most English translations will just translate this as I am that I am, which is totally possible. It's mind-blowing. We aren't quite sure what this name means. But Hebrew scholars are quick to point out that it could just as easily be translated, I will be with you. That his very name is the promise. I'm with you in this. No matter what you face, I am here. Now, why? Why is God's personal presence so important? Why, when I'm walking through the valley of the shadow of death, do I need to know that God is with me? This, as you go through Scriptures, seems to be somehow the answer we're looking for, even if you didn't know it. In fact, this might be the closest thing we ever get to the answer about the question of evil. So do you know the story of Job? Satan decides to test him. He loses everything, his family, his wealth, his health, everything. He wishes that he had never been born. And all he wants to know is, why, God? Why? And for like 50 chapters, he's sitting there weeping, asking why. And all of his unhelpful friends are trying to suggest answers that are wrong. And what is the answer when at the end of the book of Job? What's God's answer when he says, why do bad things happen to good people? No answer. There is no answer. Job does not get an answer, at least not the kind that we expect here. The answer is this. God shows up. He says, I'm with you. His presence is the answer. Now, this can be frustrating. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm like, come on, give me an actual answer here. I want some explanations, like what's happening here. I try and put it on my level. It doesn't make sense to me, but God doesn't seem to think that he needs to explain himself. Or maybe he knows that even if he did, we wouldn't comprehend it. Or maybe, and this is what I suspect, maybe the best answer, the only truly satisfying answer to our deepest questions, maybe it can't be put into words. Maybe what we really need is not a rational explanation, but for God himself to show up, to be with us, to enter into our suffering in the dark valley with us. That what we really need is Emmanuel, God with us. The psychologist Henry Cloud often references this one clinical study on the stress response in rhesus monkeys. And I think this it helps put together the importance of presence. Like, why do we so need presence in our lives? So it goes like this. This is 1994, I think, University of Virginia. They take these monkeys out of their social context, so away from all their friends, and they put them in a novel setting, which just means they're in a cage around nothing they've ever seen before. Brand new, right? And then while the monkey's in there, they blast it with these lights and these blaring sounds. They scare the poor things to death. And then they measure their cortisol levels, so their stress response in their body to all these stressors. And not surprisingly, cortisol through the roof. They're freaking out. Panic attack for the rhesus monkey. That's what's happening right there. Then they repeated the test with just one difference. In the second group, they ripped them out of their social context, put them into a novel context, but they did it this time with a monkey buddy. They got to bring a friend with them. And then in that context, they flashed the lights, blared the sounds, did all this, scared them to death, and they were still scared to death. And then they measured their cortisol levels, and their cortisol levels compared to the first group were half. Exact same stressors, exact same circumstances, exact same dark valley. But they weren't alone. You and I were never created to walk through the valley on our own. You need a monkey buddy. So let's tease this out a little bit. It is not enough to know that you know that God is omnipresent. I mean, I hope you do know that. That's an important fact. You should know that fact about God. But when you're in the darkest valley, your theology means almost nothing unless you've experienced it, unless you've lived it. We are not talking about head knowledge here. We are talking about an experiential, personal knowledge, the knowledge that is in your body, in your emotions, in your relationships, in you. That's what you have to know. So Jonathan Edwards, the famous theologian, he has this beautiful passage where he talks about it's the difference between someone telling you that honey is sweet and someone picking up a big spoonful and sticking it in your mouth. Like, that's a totally different way. You both know that honey is sweet, but the second way is a better way. It's a deeper way. It's a way that once you experience it, it shapes you. You do not forget it. You have to taste and see that it is good. And this is the way we are called to experience God's presence. We have to know it like we know that honey is sweet. Knowing it, that experiential knowledge of his presence, that's what makes the difference. And this, at least in part, is why I invite you, before I preach every single week, to just stop. Listen. Open up your body, your heart, your mind, your soul to the people around you and to the God who promises to be present here and now. Because we have to practice the presence of God. Throughout the scriptures, God promises, never will I leave you or forsake you. Jesus, before he ascends to heaven, says, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. And when you unite your life to God by faith in Jesus, God the Father and God the Son promise to give you the Holy Spirit, that he will take up residence in you. He will dwell with you. He will be the comforter. God is here. He is with you. He is present. So the question then becomes, are you? Are you present to him? Are you aware of his presence in your life? You see, in the normal, things are fine, day-to-day, busy life of green pastures, still waters, it's really easy to just not pay much attention to this. But when you pass through the valley of the shadow of death, you cannot make it through on your own. You cannot. You need this. So let's take it one step further. What's the primary way in which we are to experientially know the presence of God in our lives? How God is spirit and truth. So how do we feel him, see him, hear him? And the answer that is loud and clear, blasted throughout the New Testament is this: through one another. That's how, through one another. We are the body of Christ. The physical body of Christ in the world. We are his hands and his feet. So when the person next to you embraces you, that's not just the person next to you. That's Christ embracing you. When you sin, when you do something that you are so ashamed of and broken with, and you just don't know how to move on, and someone hears that and says over you, Jesus died for that. I know you might not feel it right now, but you are forgiven, period. When someone says that over you, that is not just your friend saying that over you. That is the very voice of Christ. We are the hands and feet of Christ. So, what's Jesus teach in the Sermon on the Mount? When you feed the hungry, when you clothe the naked, when you visit the sick and those who are imprisoned, and we're not just talking about physical slavery here, we're talking about addiction. We're talking about imprisoned in anxiety, depression, and an abusive relationship. When you love that person, care for that person, Jesus says, truly I tell you that whatever you did for the least of these, you did it for me. That the primary way that we see, hear, and feel his presence in our lives is through one another. And this is why this is so important, because I've been a pastor long enough to see this in your lives. There's this horrific temptation in us, alive from the pit of hell itself, that when you're in a dark valley, when you're going through that, then you can't share that with anyone. So what do? When life is good and you're in the green pastures and still waters, you're like, yeah, let's hang out. Let's bring all these people into my life. But as soon as things fall apart, what's your temptation? Pull away. Isolate. And that is the one thing you cannot do. The one thing that if you do that, you will no longer experience his presence in your life and it will destroy you. That is the voice of Satan. When you are in the deepest of darks, you need to know that God is with you. And the primary way you experience that is through the people sitting right next to you. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And do you hear the movement there from where I'm at to who is with me, to what he is holding? So these are the traditional tools of the shepherd. The rod is essentially a weapon, like it's a club. Sometimes it'll have nails or sharp objects embedded in the end, and it could be used by the shepherd to defend the sheep against predators, to correct wayward sheep, and to count and examine the sheep to make sure that not one gets lost. Now, the staff then has a crook at the end, and it's used for guiding, pulling the sheep back from danger, gently directing the flock. So in the ancient Near East, in Israel, and then across the ancient Near East, though. If you've ever seen the casket of Tutankhamun, he's holding the flail and the crook on his chest. These are the same symbols, just in a different context. It's the idea that this is what a shepherd king does. A shepherd king protects, he watches over, he disciplines, he guides his people. And David says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. He remembers that God is the one who's protecting him against the enemy. He doesn't have to defend himself. God will. God is the one watching over him, that he can know that they shall never perish, for no one can snatch them out of my Father's hands. He knows that he's loved enough to be disciplined, that the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he knows that he can be guided by him step by step all the days of my life. And this brings David this deep comfort, but I'm not sure if comfort's the exact right word here. The Hebrew scholar Rolf Jacobson points out that this has a stronger, yes, it means comfort, but it's a comfort that leads to action. So he suggests a better translation might be, your rod and your staff, they give me courage. They make me brave. They allow me to take the next step when I have no idea where the next step's going to lead. They give me the reason to get out of bed, the reason to keep moving forward. Because I know it's not dependent on me, it's dependent on you. Therefore, I will fear no evil. Not because the world is not evil. Evil is real. And not because it's not dangerous, it's terribly dangerous. And not because I'm strong enough, I'm not. But you are with me. And that's all I need to know. Now, I thought about how do I help you apply this? And here's the thing. If you're in the valley of the shadow of death, more words are probably teaching. It's probably not going to help you much. And if you're in green pastures and still waters, all this just sounds like blah, blah, blah. So I thought rather than try and tell you how to live this, I would show you. So last August, Bob Kearns asked me to come by his house. He was dying of terminal cancer, and he wanted to plan his funeral service. So while he still had strength, he asked if I would stop by. We sat down in his kitchen to meet. And just then, the sky turned black, and it was like a hurricane-like storm started pounding the house. And somehow, that felt really appropriate. So through the storm, we talked about family, about holding life loosely, about gratitude. He wanted that song sang at his funeral. About his favorite psalms. Psalm 103, bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. He wanted that read. And Psalm 23. Bob was walking through the valley of the shadow of death, and he did it with such courage and such faith that I thought I would be up here talking to you about how Bob is an example for us all of how to live and die in faith. But God had a different plan. So here we are 10 months later, and rather than me talking about Bob, I want to invite Bob to come talk to you. Yeah? Let's give Bob a round of applause.
First week of February 2024. My oncologist told me I had 3 weeks to live. I could possibly extend that time a few moments if I started chemo, but I'd probably be very sick. Here I was, literally walking through the valley of the shadow of death. But I wasn't afraid, because I knew that God was with me. When Paul came to see me in the hospital, I told him I didn't know how long I would have to live, but it is okay whenever God wanted to take me home. I was not anxious or angry. I felt a calm that was the peace that surpasses all understanding. I decided that if God gave me more days, there must be some things he wanted me to do. Today, sharing my story with you is one of those things. Sometime later, Paul came to the house, and then, as he discussed, we planned my funeral. I was no stranger to cancer, having been treated both in 2009 and 2011. But in 2009, the oncologist said the bad news was it was cancer, but the good news was it was a very curable type of cancer. But this time, it was a very aggressive cancer, and the treatment was only 10% effective. I prayed for discernment and decided that if there was a treatment, it was a gift from God, and God would decide if I would be in the 10%. They drilled a new hole in my head, about a quarter, size of a quarter, and inserted a drain that would enable the medication to get to the lower part of my brain and the spinal cord where the cancer was growing. And that wasn't working very well, and my Paoli-based oncologist said she really didn't have access to all the treatments they did at Penn. She referred me to Philadelphia. The oncologists there did some studies and some tests and talked to the board of oncology at Penn and decided to try a new drug. And I went to Philly every 3 weeks for 4-hour infusions. The port I'd had inserted in my chest made it very easy and not painful like it was when they stuck all those needles in my hands years ago. There were some serious side effects, including a subdural hematoma. My brain was bleeding, a problem that is sometimes fatal. They inserted a catheter in my arm, ran it up through my neck and to my brain, and they used glue to seal the vessels that were bleeding. Glue in my brain. The prayers and the glue worked, and I got better. Later, I developed a pleural effusion. Fluid was collecting not in my lungs, but behind my lungs, in the space that the lungs are supposed to expand when you breathe. It made it very painful for me to breathe. They extracted 4 liters of fluid, the equivalent of 2 2-liter bottles of whatever you might have in the refrigerator. All the prayers and the treatment worked, and I recovered again. Lastly, an MRI revealed some suspicious spots in my abdomen near my liver and under my arm. I needed a biopsy. The ultrasound technician was using the wand and trying to find something under my arm, but she couldn't find anything. And the surgeon tried, and she couldn't find it either. I told her a lot of people are praying for me, and she said, sometimes that makes a difference. When I completed the 12 infusions and had scans and an MRI that revealed nothing, no cancer anywhere, my wife asked the doctor, what's the prognosis now? And he said he really didn't know because he had no data. Nobody had gotten through this disease with this drug without follow-up stem cell transplant. I asked him if I should look for my name in the New England Journal of Medicine, but he said they'd never use patient names. Throughout this 15-month ordeal, people at New Story and at my former church in Westchester and fellow members of my chaplain's spiritual care team at Paoli Hospital had all been praying for me. One of my friends said this was a miracle. Today, I stand before you as a walking, breathing example of the power of prayer. We have a prayer group here at New Story that meets the 2nd and 4th Thursdays, and I invite you to join us. We pray for miracles like this. And we praise God from whom all blessings flow. And all God's people said,